Yes,
Absolutely.
reading between the lines, reading between the lines. And speaking of lines, the Ugandan oil pipeline again is in the news, and this time is due to the attack on the leader of an NGO who was beaten, abducted, and taken far away from his place, dumped. And let's just go ahead and share the story. And it goes to us, and it comes from The Guardian. It's a Ugandan oil pipeline protester beaten as part of alarming crackdown. Stephen Kizikiriza is one of the 11 campaigners against ECOWAS targeted by authorities in the past 2 weeks, rights group says. A man campaigning against the controversial 5 billion or 4 billion pounds East African crude oil pipeline, commonly known as ECOWAS, is recovering in hospital after an alleged beating by the Ugandan armed forces in the latest incident in what has been called an alarming crackdown on the country's environmentalists. Stephen Kirikiza, who works for Ugandan Environmental Governance Institute, EGI, a non-profit organization, was abducted in Kampala on 4th of June, according to his employer. He was beaten, questioned, and then abandoned hundreds of miles from the capital on Sunday evening. The Ugandan People Defense Force denied it was responsible and accused Kirikiza of faking his abduction. Colonel Dio Akiki, the military deputy spokesman, said it has been established that the said person is totally deceiving. All the facts has been established. We're in touch with the police and his organization to know his intention for telling such lies. End quote. According to the International Federation for Human Rights, Kirikiza is one of 11 campaigners against oil projects which has been targeted by Ugandan police, military, and government officials in the past 2 weeks. The ECOWAS plans, backed by French oil company Total and the state-owned China National Offshore Corporation, with the Uganda and Tanzania government is holding minority stakes, have attracted widespread criticisms from environmentalists since it was first mooted in 2013. They claim the route endangered several national parks and would displace tens of thousands of people from their homes. Kirikiza has been reporting on the alleged human rights abuses around the Kingfisher oil fields on the shore of Lake Albert. Oil from there will be transported along the 870-mile ECOWAS, which will run between Uganda and the Tanzania coast. Over to you, sir.
Okay, very good. All right, so first, I have a direct message, of course, to the CEO of Total Energies, Mr. Pouyan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's spelled, I believe, Pouyane. So, CEO of Total, this oil pipeline, and to export the oil through Uganda to Tanzania and then ship it to the international community, it's not going to work. It's not going to succeed. Look at the experience of what happened in the Delta in Nigeria. Look at the Ogoni region. Look what has happened. You are supporting a regime that is illegitimate and unpopular. And the oil pipeline runs in significant parts of areas of Uganda where the dictator, General Museveni, is very unpopular. Are you going to be able to militarily deploy to guard a pipeline hundreds of miles long? Of course, it won't happen. People will sabotage the pipeline because they don't like the regime. So it means they won't like any entity that is supporting the regime. So that's a direct message I'm telling you. And then in terms of how people are being brutalized, okay, it's very unfortunate, this incident of torture. And you see, now the government is denying it because obviously they know it's going to be big international news. So the question is, okay, so this guy basically tortured and self-inflicted these wounds on him that has required his hospitalization. But look at the other things that have been going on. Ordinary peasant farmers are being kicked off their land. and given offers they cannot refuse. Some of them being given $20 for their land. You cannot even buy an Angus steak burger with $20 here in New York City. Somebody who's using his land to feed himself and his family and have a little money to maybe even have school fees by selling the produce from his land, and you're giving him $20 basically at the end of the battle of a gun, you know, take it, or you're not going to get anywhere, we're still going to kick you out anyway. And then they're producing documents that they allege were signed by people. Who in his right mind would sell land for $20?
$20.
On the other hand, anybody with a gun pointing at his head would sign any document just to protect their lives. So this is what's going on, and I'm glad that the oil pipeline is not proceeding as the government had hoped, because many international banks, many international insurance companies have abandoned the project. So the dictatorship needs at least $2 billion and is running around the world looking for $2 billion. You know, I mean, I know Museveni is corrupt, but I don't think he can easily pull that from wherever he's hiding his money. And why would he put down his own ill-gotten money, even if he had $2 billion somewhere, to this pipeline? So he wants others to put their money. So he's been trying lately to get the money from China. But the Chinese are not incompetent. They have representation in Uganda. They're looking at the tea leaves. They're monitoring the politics very carefully. And they're probably saying to themselves, why don't we wait it out and negotiate with Bobby Wine once he's sworn in as a president? That would be the wise thing to do. And I'm not saying that automatically Bobby Wine and his party, the National Unity Platform, would endorse the pipeline. To be honest, I don't know his position on the pipeline, given the environmental damage that's been reported, right? Is there a way that they could still accommodate it with some measures being taken to ameliorate some of the negative impact? I don't know. Personally, my own position, and this is, of course, my own personal position, is that at a stage where environmental disruption is already causing these significant damages to the ecosystem in many African countries, do we really need to be expanding the level of fossil fuels in the world? I don't know.
I mean, it's one for contemplation. I know of the issues in Ogoni land where most of the vegetation has died off. Water is hard to come by. Even the people are fishermen by trade. They now have to go farther into the oceans to get fishes because the local rivers they're devoid of fishes. So again, that puts much more economic impact on the local body. Some of them have had to up stakes and move.
Right.
So imagine.
And the other question, of course, what about the vegetation? What about the soil that you use to grow your food? What about the water that you drink? Think about that. You know?
What about the rain? Even the rain.
Think about that. Even the rain is affected.
The rain coming down is affected.
Yes.
So
you have your version of acid rain, right?
Acid rain, yeah. So, you know, it's a technology that needs to be let go. It's a technology that needs to be let go.
And the thing is, we have these desperate economies with desperate leaders, and that is why they push for it at every measure. So rather than saying, let me go on a charm campaign, this is a country of young people. I'm 80 years old next year. The dictator, he turns 80 next year. Let me go on a charm campaign. What is the possible way that I can actually get the international community to finance this project? Maybe I should take example from South Africa. In the case of South Africa, of course, I oppose it because they're going in bed with imperialism. But in the case of Uganda, why not go with the youth that actually won the last election? ease myself out, form a government of national unity, and ease myself out and say, next year I'm going to step down before the election schedule for 2 years from now. You see? Instead, you're practicing the same kind of extortion and brutality that you've been practicing for the last 38 years in power. Torturing a prominent person from an environmental organization and then having your police spokesperson saying, oh no, he's lying. He made up the wounds on his body.
He beat himself up.
I mean, the hospital is treating fictitious wounds. It's just amazing, you know?
Again, yes. Thank you.